Your lifetime of experience to make a difference. Details at aarp.org/FLvolunteer. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler. On today's First Coast Connect, is downtown on the edge of transformation? Boosters say, just wait. We ask, how long? Then, a teacher removed from her classroom over social media posts. The district investigation is over, so why isn't she being allowed to return? We get an update from artist and educator Hope McMath. And a moment of silence and some reflection from our resident sportscaster Alessandra Pompriand after the Jaguars' disappointing loss. Join the conversation. Give us a call on air at 904-549-2937 or head to firstcoastconnect.org, where you can find all the ways to connect with us and sign up for our new daily newsletter. Stick around. We'll be back right after the news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Trump says Iran has reached out to negotiate with the United States. This comes after Oman, a mediator between the U.S. and Iran, had dispatched its top diplomat to Tehran for talks amid nationwide anti-government protests roiling Iran. NPR's Aya Batrawi has the latest.
Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One that the U.S. could meet with Iranian officials and that a meeting is being set up. But he cautioned that the military is also looking at, quote, some very strong options. Trump said if Iran attacks U.S. assets in the Mideast, they will be met with a very powerful force. Iranian authorities have cut off internet across the country for 4 days now in a bid to stifle protests that they say are being stoked by, quote, terrorists. Rights groups estimate that hundreds of protesters have been killed in the demonstrations that began December 28th. Iran says security personnel have also been killed. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi repeated the government's position that foreign elements are fueling the violence. The government planned rallies in support of the regime Monday. Aya Batrawi, NPR News, Dubai.
Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell says the Justice Department served subpoenas on the central bank late last week. It's about building renovations of Fed offices in Washington, D.C. But Powell says this is really pressure to force him to cave to President Trump and cut interest rates, even if that's not in the interest of Americans. Market futures are sharply lower this morning, and Wall Street opens in about half an hour. David Wessel of the Brookings Institution warns if the Fed does what Trump demands, the likely result would be more inflation for Americans.
If the market today does react strongly to the latest development, there's a chance that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent or someone else will persuade the president and the attorney general to back off. Or maybe if more Republican senators besides Senator Thom Tillis, who spoke on this yesterday, will talk the administration out of this.
He spoke to NPR's Morning Edition. At this hour, Dow futures are down more than 300 points. The federal government is still beefing up immigration efforts in Minnesota. NPR's Sergio Martinez Beltran reports federal authorities will send hundreds more agents to the state this coming week.
Right now, there are more than 2,000 federal immigration agents in Minnesota. That's 3 times the size of the Minneapolis Police Department. This week, more Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Border Patrol agents are expected to come to the state to help carry out President Trump's crackdown on immigration. Multiple residents in Minneapolis neighborhoods told NPR they've seen ICE agents going door to door. Vice President J.D. Vance, in a recent news conference, said agents were doing this to find, quote, criminal illegal aliens. ICE in the past has focused on targeted arrests. So all of this is highly unusual, but this is all part of the Trump administration's effort to deport millions from the U.S. Sergio Martinez Beltran, NPR News, Minneapolis.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good morning. You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's 9:04. Starting today, construction will disrupt traffic on A1A South near the St. Augustine Amphitheater. The county plans to relocate a water main to support the construction of a new signaled pedestrian crossing. County officials say the new crossing will make pedestrians safer and ease traffic flow during big events at the amphitheater. Traffic will be open to drivers, but expect slowdowns. Cyclists will be detoured down neighborhood roads west of A1A, and pedestrians will be able to walk along shifted walkways to avoid construction. Work is expected to last through the end of January. State leaders want to reduce the property tax on Floridians. Douglas Soul reports it might not happen during the legislative session, which starts tomorrow.
Governor Ron DeSantis is floating a spring special session to create proposals.
You get into a regular session, it's 60 days. There's things flying all over the place, and things kind of sneak through at the last minute.
DeSantis says they have time, since voters will have to approve changes during the November election. The Senate president says he's open to the idea. Representative Toby Overdorf heads the House Property Tax Committee and doesn't think it's necessary.
I'm not sure why they would like to do it outside of session, when things would move incredibly fast within a 3-day session, rather than us focusing on it now and working through that process over a 60-day session instead.
Local governments warn property tax changes will impact critical services. I'm Douglas Soul in Tallahassee.
Highs in the upper 50s to lower 60s in Northeast Florida today.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, celebrating 100 years of giving for good. More at mott.org/100. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, a teacher removed from her classroom over social media posts. 4 months ago, she still can't return. We find out why and hear directly from artist and educator Hope McMath about the results of the Duval school investigation. But first, an annual look back at the past 18 months of downtown development. Here to tell us about the State of Downtown report and give us the lowdown on downtown is Jake Gordon, CEO of Downtown Vision Incorporated. Jake, good morning. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Ann.
Are you sad this morning? You're hoarse and your team has lost.
I am very hoarse. I'm very sorry if my voice sounds bad.
Yeah.
We tried real hard. A phenomenal season. Great for our city. Sad it's over, but glad it happened.
All right. So downtown, you do this annual report. It is representative of DVI, and DVI, for people who may not remember, is representative and funded by the Downtown Business District.
Mm-hmm.
So you do this annual report to kind of give us the pulse. And what is your overall assessment of the state of downtown?
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks for the question. Downtown Jacksonville is a great place, and we have a lot of property owners. So we do this on behalf of the property owners, including the city of Jacksonville, Mayor Deegan, and the Downtown Investment Authority. And the reality is, I think people think that we've gone backwards, but every metric is up. We have one metric that's down, that's office occupancy, which is happening everywhere. But in terms of visitors, in terms of tourism, in terms of investment, everything is up. And it feels very important to keep this momentum going to make our city better.
Up, when you say up year over year, I mean, you've been there 11 years now. You've got some time in the chair. You have some wisdom. You have some ability to look back. Are we further ahead than we were 11 years ago? Or you say we're like further ahead than we were last year?
Well, we're further ahead than last year. We're unequivocally further ahead than 11 years ago. It has feeling like I moved here 11 years ago. It has been a blur. Cities are built in decades, not in years. So I think for regular individual, they don't see the changes. But I think if you could go in a time machine and walk in downtown in 2015, you would see today so many more changes. Just the cranes in the air from the stadium itself under construction, Four Seasons. I mean, everywhere you look, there's so much more investment and activity than 10 years ago. And that's going to lead us in another 10 years looking back, which is kind of part of our research that we're trying to do. But yes, definitely moving forward.
So does the report also also look at the weak spots, things that need fixing, prioritizing things that are not working.
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone can go see the report. It's at ttjax.com/reports. And really a lot of it is a presentation of data. We try to analyze some of that data, but the reality is we give you the raw data. If you go and get the report as a PDF, it's one thing, but if you go online, there's even a way to dig into it even more. So, it's like 25% of people come from 30 miles or further in downtown, and 10% of people come from 2 miles. Some of these things are kind of hard to unpack, but it really is. We've just tried to collect all the data to really make sure we have a clearinghouse of kind of how we're doing. And then any one area, you can kind of look at it and make conclusions for yourself.
When we spoke to you last, I think there had been some very kind of long-time merchant that had left downtown, Emily Moody, who had Wolf and Cub, which was kind of like a boutique store. She's relocated that store. Are there similar merchants, tenants downtown that you feel like are on the edge of pulling out? Or do you feel that the momentum is in the other direction? What are you hearing directly from your client base?
And I think, we love Emily, and Wolf and Cub was open for a long time in downtown. And we're worried about all of our retail businesses, honestly. You look at these big projects like University of Florida, the stadium, Four Seasons, those are going to be amazing. They're also going to take like years and years to build out. Like retail institutions in downtown, they're like day to day. And so any institution that you like, Florida Theater or Bellwether as a restaurant or, anything, if you like it, please go spend your money. Because people ask how to help downtown. The number one way to help downtown to get the change you seek, if you're going to go to Riverfront Plaza or a new destination waterfront parks, go to a place to eat, go to a restaurant, go to something, spend your money, because everyone has higher costs than ever before. And we do need to support the businesses that we have. Absolutely.
We talked a little before the program started about these new playgrounds that have opened. 3 new playgrounds, all kind of almost within eyesight of each other downtown, mostly situated along the riverfront. And this is a kind of a great thing, but also raises the question of like, how much capacity do we need? I feel like this is something that I kind of hassle the mayor about sometimes in terms of just sheer park space. It's like a great thing, and yet it has to be activated. It has to be maintained. It has to be occupied for it to be, a fun place to be or a useful space for people who live here.
I mean, how many parks do you need? In my mind, you could have a lot. It's kind of like how much art do you need or otherwise. But the reality is those public spaces are bringing people downtown. They are free. They're an amazing amenity for our city. And then if you're going to have a destination playground, isn't downtown the place to have it? So everyone has to come downtown. And then it's the economic activity it draws, much like the Buffalo fans came downtown and stayed at the hotels. Well, these parks are drawing so many more people downtown. I know Mayor Deegan has been very focused on that. And you look at that, and that will really add economic activity, which then makes the properties more valuable, which then brings more tax rateables to the city, which then they're able to spend more on infrastructure and schools and all these other things that we need. So the value of our city, particularly of our downtown, is incredibly important to the city's business plan. And these public space, buildings are so much more valuable that are based near big waterfront destination parks. And so these skyscrapers are going to go up in value. The city's going to have more money because the owners of the skyscrapers are going to pay more back to the city. So I do think it's very, very important and very, very valuable.
So you raised the question of, how much art is enough. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about Art Walk. That's something that was in the news last year because of fees that had been expanded for people who are displaying at Art Walk. At the time, we invited you to come on the program. You declined. So I would like to ask you about that at this point. The concern I think people have is that it is becoming prohibitively expensive for some people to participate, but also whether as the conversation that we did have on air here about the fees, whether Art Walk is also just sort of changing perhaps the original mission, which was try to, activate existing gallery spaces and downtown businesses, and is becoming too festival focused, something that is applied once a month as opposed to actually helping to invigorate the people who are merchants downtown there year round.
Yeah, absolutely. And so first of all, I should have come on your show. I'm really sorry I didn't. We love Art Walk, and we love that everyone loves Art Walk. It really is. We're trying to promote the cultural community, but we are trying to help the businesses. And then we're also trying to make sure the audience that comes is really happy. So it is like 3 different audiences that we're trying to support. And I think we do charge to be a vendor at Art Walk. And we had we really, the fees to charge weren't new, but we expanded the area we needed to charge because we had certain vendors like in the park paying one number and then other vendors on the periphery paying nothing. And I think at the end of the day, we're a nonprofit, just like every business. You're trying to make sure you're sustainable, but still, we're never making money on Art Walk and never have in the 25 years DVI has been around. But the reality is trying to make it work for everyone and still sustain itself. Because, for example, all the costs for Art Walk compared to 11 years ago are much, much higher, even to public safety, even to helping close the streets, all of these things. So I think that's what you're going to see if you want to support things like Art Walk come out. Well, the reality is it's free. So the more people that come out to Art Walk, I actually have more costs, not less. I don't make any revenue. So the idea would be that we really need to figure out how we can get more supporters of Art Walk. If you like it, we would love to talk to you and we could curate your support to supporting the people that we want to support. And we do love how it's for everyone and everyone comes downtown.
Who are the stakeholders there? When you mentioned businesses, the people who attend.
Yeah. And then the arts community. All the vendors are actually artists. So we charge art vendors one number and other vendors more because we're trying to support the artists more. So it's actually much cheaper to be an arts vendor at Art Walk than to be a different kind of vendor, like sell food, for example.
And which of those constituencies would you say love Art Walk the way it is, and which ones are not happy with it?
I think all of them usually see it their way and want it to be even better. And at the end of the day, this is similar to Mayor Deegan and any electeds. If there was just unlimited resources, we could add them to do it, and there's just not. And I think that's where you see in downtown, that's where we got to be even more specific in 2026. I almost said 2016, to put our money. And I think the businesses want downtown to be even better and Art Walk to be even better. The arts people want it to be even better. And so does the audience. Everyone kind of wants it, thinks it's great, and wants it to be better, much like downtown itself.
We're talking to Jake Gordon from Downtown Vision Incorporated. We have a call from Kevin in Springfield. Good morning, Kevin. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning, y'all. I'm sure you're sharing the same depression that we're all feeling this morning, but great year for the Jags and great year for downtown. A lot of development happening. I just want to comment on someone who's downtown on a weekly basis, driving through downtown on a daily basis until we can get this homeless population under control, until we can provide the services necessary to get it under control and thus control the litter issue, which that population very much affects. People are coming downtown. These parks are absolutely, we see it. My kids and I, we go to these new parks all the time on either side of the river. People are coming that usually don't come downtown. But once they see what their surroundings are, and that goes for new tenants, whether residential or commercial, they're going to see what surrounds them, and they're not going to want to be there anymore. So let's take advantage of that magnet that we have and sustain it with the proper city services, but we've got to do something about the homeless population. Love y'all.
Kevin, thanks so much. Jake, there was a new law that went into effect last year that, requires different procedures when it comes to whether, the city's supposed to be providing spaces as opposed to, allowing people to camp overnight. Have you seen any changes because of that law?
I find it incredibly positive where the city, and I love that caller, it's absolutely right. And this is an economic development issue, but it's also a helping people issue. And the social services have been working very closely with JSO and the administration, with Tracy and Mayor Deegan and otherwise. And I think we have made a huge amount of progress. But this is the lesson, just like our report. Even though you've made a huge amount of progress, there's still a lot of ways to go. I mean, even one person sleeping on the street is too many. The idea that we really want to promote our neighborhood, and we will see the homeless issue is an issue that makes property less valuable. So going back to the business strategy, and then the reality is, even with JSO working, getting homeless people off the street because they are the enforcement arm, the reality is the vast majority of them went into services. But there really isn't enough resources for these services, and we just need more. So if people want to support, Sulzbacher or Ability Housing or all these great nonprofits changing homelessness, that's where even the best plan to implement, there isn't enough capacity to really implement the way we want to. But I will say way less people sleeping on the street than 10 years ago, if you judge it by decades. And I think the caller is still right, though. This is an issue that still needs to be really focused on in downtown. And I could do another hour talking about it, but it is an important issue.
And one of the reasons that we're going to let you bounce early today is because you've got to go meet with city council folk to talk about a variety of issues. But one thing I just want to ask you about before we do let you go is the incentive structure. It does seem like this council is moving away from wanting to give cash incentives to bring businesses downtown, much more comfortable with other means of doing so, or perhaps just maybe wanting to do more with less. What is your feeling about the need for cash incentives to bring businesses to downtown Jacksonville?
Well, as our report shows, we are on the right track, supporting these mega projects that'll have instant impact for the rest of our lives and our kids' lives in downtown and help our city. I do think council is doing what it's supposed to do, which is spending the city's monies wisely and questioning every purchasing decision that they have. And I am going to future downtown committee. We have a brand new CEO of the DIA, Colin Tarbert, who came from Baltimore, who's really a subject matter expert on this. And you look at what Baltimore and many other cities did, you do need to incentivize development. It's a little bit like giving businesses that move here funds and incentives. You do need to do it. If no one was doing it, you wouldn't need to, but you do if they have choices on where they can develop. And then the reality is what is too much and what is not enough. And that's why every single decision and every single development project, as you can see at council, has been scrutinized. And at the end of the day, council and the mayor have both worked on moving these developments forward. And in downtown, projects can get more money than in other parts of the city. And that is the best way to do it, because then you're creating this engine of tax revenue that will come off and throw off. We mentioned Cleveland, and Cleveland uses its money from downtown to help the whole city. A better downtown helps all of Jacksonville.
Well, Jake Gordon, we will let you fly. Thanks so much for coming on this morning. We have a link to the report on our website, and we welcome you back anytime. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, the school district's investigation is over, but teacher Hope McMath is still out of the classroom. We find out why. Welcome back. It's been almost 4 months to the day since artist, activist, and educator Hope McMath was removed from her role as an AP art history teacher at Duval County Schools, and the school district began an investigation into controversial social media posts. The investigation is over, but she's still not teaching. Here to tell us why, we're joined by Hope McMath. Good morning, Hope. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, Ann. Glad to be here.
We're also joined by Hope's attorney, John Phillips. John, welcome back.
Good morning.
So, posts following Charlie Kirk's shooting death on September 11th, that was sort of the genesis of this, at least initially, as far as we know. So, you were officially removed September 15th?
Yes, that's correct.
From your role, and you teach AP Art History at Douglas Anderson School of the Arts. This is a issue that has gotten a lot of media attention. You all did a press conference in December about a lawsuit that you have filed against the school district for violating your First Amendment rights and your 14th Amendment rights of equal protection. So catch us up a little bit on where we are now, because this press conference in December that you held seemed to kickstart some resolution with your investigation with the school district.
Correct. And so I was removed from the schools on September 15th, put on reassignment, which is sort of its own interesting story, what it means to be reassigned when you're a teacher pulled out of the classroom. That initial complaint was through Duval County Public Schools. We learned very early on that the complaint originated with the Moms for Liberty group here in Duval County. But that complaint also within a couple of days went up to the state level, which is in part of the process. And so just to be clear, I was under investigation with both Duval County Public Schools, but also with the State Board of Education. A lawsuit did ensue when it was clear that this wasn't, one, going to be quick, and two, started to become more clear what I was targeted for and by whom I was targeted. And that lawsuit includes Duval County board members, State Board of Education, as well as members of Moms for Liberty. Since then, right before the holiday break for the schools, John and I got to spend more time with our investigator team here in Duval County, who are terrific professionals. We've been kind of fortunate, I think, to have the people that we've had. And they made clear that the case with Duval County Public Schools is now wrapped up and closed.
Which sounds like a good thing, right?
Yes, they did find substantiation, and John will go more into this, but I basically, after being out of school for 4 months, the only thing that they ended up sticking with out of a very voluminous original complaint was some use of profanity on my private social media pages, most of it contained within works of art. And so we were hopeful that at that point it was then going to mean it was basically a little slap on the hand. And, we were hoping I'd go back into the classroom, which has been one of our goals through this entire thing, is getting me reinstated.
Because to be clear, they were in their disposition of this case. They weren't saying we're going to keep you out of the classroom. They said that our investigation is over. You've made some minor violations,
right,
in terms of using profanity.
Correct. So as a result, though, they said at that same hearing that they were not going to reinstate me to the classroom because I'm under investigation with the state. So even though Duval County Public Schools has basically cleared the decks of this case, I am still under investigation with the state. So I am still out of the classroom, which is most important when it comes to the learning of my students.
And we'll talk more
Yes.
about that for sure. But John, if the school district has done its investigation and come back with a finding that there was some violations of, kind of conduct and
Right.
appropriate language, what more would the state be looking for? What more could the state possibly find?
Political weaponization, perhaps. I'm just going to be clear about that. The Duval County Public Schools are the ones that these complaints start with. And while I could mince words with what Thomas Caggiano said, including the B word, and what Hope said, including the B word, and how Thomas Caggiano was found to have been issued hundreds of thousands of dollars for his lawsuit when he was unfairly suspended. But regardless, at all meetings with the DCPS, they said it was non-disciplinary, non-stacking. This was over. She needed to be coached. And they said, and we just coached you. And then, we're like, all right, we won, 5 days after our press conference. The other teacher I represent was immediately reinstated the following Monday after the press conference. And so we're like, well, this is good. We've got some, attrition. We're moving the ball down the field. And then DCPS in one line in her letter basically says, but, there's still the state investigation. And the state investigation is caught up in an administrative court case, which would then have to be appealed. And so we're going to amend our federal lawsuit, seek an immediate injunction to get her placed back into school based upon DCPS's findings alone. They did an investigation. They were the only ones that even tried to meet with Hope. And we spent hours talking to them.
You mentioned Thomas Caggiano. He is a teacher that had been removed from the classroom. This was about 5 years ago. He'd posted very nasty comments about the LGBTQ community and the trans community. It seems like a different time, but his administration, suspended him for that. He ultimately sued the school district.
Right.
And as it happens, it was just a couple months ago that the school district had to pay out nearly $400,000 to this teacher for removing him because of his social media posts. Can you remind us a little bit about what the law says when it comes to teachers and what they can say publicly about matters of public import?
Certainly. Matters of public import, protected political speech is always protected. Just keep it out of the classroom, right? Mm-hmm. What you do on your social media, what you do, on your private time is more important now than ever. We can't we can't be yelling at each other and then have our educators just, blindfolded in a gag around their mouth saying you can't participate in the political process because you might have a student that could possibly see it, which is kind of the standard here. And that doesn't apply. These are government jobs, which is important to emphasize, Ann, because that means that the government is the one doing the censoring of the speech. And that's absolutely prohibited. And, Pickering versus Board of Education, was the very first U.S. Supreme Court case that really dealt into this because it was political speech.
It was the teacher who wrote a letter to the editor of the local newspaper.
Correct, trying to whistleblow. And they suspended him, and then they said, wait. You still have the right to write the newspaper. You still have the right to do things. And even during the meeting with DCPS and Hope, there was this back and forth about art versus speech, and Hope was like testing them. Hey, but what if it's a billboard? What if it's a piece of art? What if a student walks in there? What if a student walks by? Well, if a student walks by a classroom, that means that teacher's on Facebook in the classroom. That's that teacher's problem. There is never 100% clear. There has never been a scintilla of an allegation or anything that said Hope did anything wrong in the classroom, that any student or parent complained about her. This was generated by a 501c4 Moms for Liberty, which is aligned with the political views of Charlie Kirk's organization, Turning Point. They're connected to the point that even the Moms for Liberty school board members wore what during that very same school board meeting where they voted on Thomas Caggiano's settlement? Turning Point T-shirts. Like, it's preposterous in its truthfulness.
If you're just joining us, we're talking to educator and activist Hope McMath about her removal from the classroom for social media posts. We're also talking to her attorney, John Phillips. We should mention that Phillips and Hunt is an underwriter for WJCT. But you are welcome to join our conversation. You can give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also go to firstcoastconnect.org and find all the ways that you can connect with us. We've got a call from Wells on the South Side. Good morning, Wells. Go ahead.
Good morning, Ann and Hope and John. Good morning to all three of you.
Good morning.
Part of what's happening in the country today is the elimination or the working towards privatization of education. And one of the tactics they're using is an attack on our freedom of speech. And that's one of the things that's happening with Hope McMath and the reason she's not back in her classroom, which has done tremendous harm to her students and the other teacher who was pulled out of her class. One of her students actually had to be hospitalized. What we're seeing is a full-throated attack on the education system as we know it. I have been going to school board meetings and city council meetings regarding this issue. We have a picket line outside of the school board headquarters at every meeting that they have. The meeting starts at 6, and we have a picket line from 5 until 6. The absence of teaching Black history is an issue that's affecting and harming the African American community. So I want to thank Hope and John for putting this issue front and center, and we will be continuing to support protecting our public schools. So I just want to leave it at that for now and say we're behind you. I'm part of Take Them Down, and it's a coalition that's being built. So keep up the fight. We're there with you.
Thank you, Wells.
Thank you.
Thanks for the call, Wells. I want to ask about that, Hope, because I know you've discussed in the past the chilling effect that this has had on teachers that you know. And Wells mentioned teaching Black history, teaching African American history. The rules around that have changed in Florida, and in terms of teaching anything in the classroom that can kind of cause one student to feel bad about what it is that they're learning. There's, all kinds of restrictions that have been placed on that. But you have actually known teachers who have stopped teaching certain subjects because they're so concerned about running afoul of some of these new rules and guidelines or getting a complaint generated from a student in the classroom, things that include things like slavery.
That's right. And if we can sort of go back a couple of years and look at sort of the birth of this kind of quote anti-woke agenda that the state of Florida, from a government standpoint, began to take up. It started by attacking critical race theory, which of course wasn't being taught in K-12 schools anyway. It was a very specific kind of curriculum at the university level. And then it started to sort of creep into how or if Black history could be taught in the schools. And because teachers were starting to get targeted by sometimes students and many times forces outside of their classroom, many teachers just said, there's parts of this I'm just not going to teach, or I'm going to teach it real different than what I've done in the past, and water down the kind of truth telling that typically happens in an art classroom or a history classroom or a philosophy classroom or a sociology classroom or a literature classroom. I know teachers who have changed what books they teach. We know books have been taken off the shelves in schools. They've been banned in libraries. And those things are having an impact on a lot of my peers, both in the K-12 space, but also in the university space. And that, I don't think we should, I think we have to pay really close attention to that, because we are really then talking about not teaching a true and honest history and true and honest content to millions of young people. That does not bode well for our future as a society. Sometimes those lessons are hard. You know, literature can be really hard to read. American history is complicated, difficult, and full of trauma. But we have to sort of look at that wretchedness, understand where it comes from, understand how it came to be. What does the healing from that look like, right? I mean, those are the kind of lessons we want our students leaving school with. And if teachers are petrified because they see their peers being taken out of the classroom and fearful for losing their livelihood, it's very serious. And I don't know of another sector of people who are being so heavily impacted at this moment.
We've got a call from Susan in Mandarin. Good morning, Susan. Go ahead.
Yes, I want to first say that I very much appreciate what Hope and her attorney are doing for our country. Maybe I should keep it to our county, but people should be able to speak up about policy issues, and teachers should not be silenced about how they feel about various policies. But my question is, I know school board members were named in the lawsuit, and I wonder if they did anything specific that made them be named in the lawsuit.
That's a good question, Susan. To her point, John, there are a number of school board members, 5 of them, all endorsed by Moms for Liberty. The lawsuit also names Moms for Liberty, Duval, and National. But why are they being individually named? Is it because of their association with Moms for Liberty?
It's because they were acting as individuals, acting in furtherance of Moms for Liberty, wearing shirts that were Turning Point branded shirts, and choosing speech. Moms for Liberty Brevard is a spinoff of Moms for Liberty. Moms for Liberty Brevard sued because the Brevard County school system, the school board, was restricting one side of speech. And what we have here is school board members promoting Christian conservative speech from the dais while choosing to give Moms for Liberty a 6-minute platform reading that extra email.
People who may not know,
right,
they did read into the record this email that they received from Moms for Liberty complaining about Hope, which is why they're
excoriating Hope, like making her this wicked witch, and again continuing these taglines of woke and the same things that you know. And again, I say I'm not Republican, I'm Democrat, I'm reasonable. You know, try to take a reasonable look at things, and there's too much fight. Like, why do we have to attack each other? That was the beautiful thing about the last week is, you know, whether you're into sports or not, we all had something to root for that was together, right? And as I said in the press conference probably 10 times, the pendulum swings both ways. And so if you think Moms for Liberty is on your side and that's your speech, just wait, because it's going to change. and we can't limit speech. And so the school board members, and it's going to get a little bit more complicated as we go, because I have a feeling Discovery is going to reveal that they were pushing the buttons a lot more than a school board member should. But there's certainly their oaths, their ties, and their promotion of that particular Moms for Liberty Turning Point branded speech, when we're talking about a political attack that was begun because of the death of Charlie Kirk. Nothing else. DCPS rebranded this as a cursing issue to get away from the politics. Some smart lawyer was like, "Yo, get away from the Charlie Kirk stuff. Let's just
that's
pick a word."
interesting, because one of the posts that had caused consternation, that initially sparked this deeper dive into your previous posts unrelated to Charlie Kirk, was a post that had to do with karma. Karma is a B word. And in their investigation, the school district didn't take issue with the karma part, sort of this offensive political,
Right.
or maybe not, recognizing the gravity of a killing enough, but it was the B word that they censured you for.
No, that's right. It really came down to profanity. And, I think it's important to give this a little further context. When I was first sort of pulled out of the classroom and made to report around this complaint, the parts of the complaint that were shared with us, and we have actually yet to see the full and complete complaint. So that is an important point to also make. But what was shared with us was not only the Karma is a B post that I made after Charlie Kirk, which actually it's a larger post than that and a larger conversation, but the shorthand of it, we'll use that for right now. But I was also asked to give testimony around material evidence that included posts that spoke up for transgender people, posts that spoke up for Black history, posts that spoke up for people in Gaza. This was not just a single post. It's like 20 plus pages. And so when you start to add and stitch those together with the 6-minute reading of a letter by one of our school board leaders into the record, it became clear that it was an attack against the way I move through this world, and the fact that I choose to share my ideas on humanity on my private social media pages, and that those ideas and ideals are counter to a lot of what Moms for Liberty holds dear.
Which 100% goes against the Caggiano case and the precedent. Again, this is the precedent. They've settled it. Caggiano said, I think about Hillary Clinton, teach this childish nasty B a lesson, have her treasonous A removed from office and put in jail. Curse words, folks, curse words on private social media.
Which, he was suspended, and then the school district had to pay a bundle.
Pay the attorney's fees. Yeah, and so, if this is the road we want to go down, but to the school board members, the general counsel, anybody going back and listening to this show now or, in Discovery, remember this point. This is why this shouldn't go this way.
We've got a call from Yali in St. Augustine. Good morning, Yali. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Yoli from Springfield, and I'm calling to show support for no problem, for Hope McMath. I'm glad that you are having this particular subject this morning. Hi, Hope. Thank you, Mr. Phillips, for taking this case. I'm a local business owner, and I teach Black history on in the public sector because of the attack on, history and things along this line. And I praise Hope for, really sacrificing herself, her career. I've known her a long time, and I admire her. I support you, Hope, 100%. But I'm also, left with the thought of thinking that if this has come down to a profane word, we have profanity coming out of the halls of 1600 Pennsylvania Street from the highest corridors in American politics. And so it strikes as being disingenuous for that to be the cause. But as a small business operator, as a citizen, as a taxpayer, I think this is wrong, and that the First Amendment, her First Amendment rights should be protected. Because if not for her, then who's next? And that's my comment.
Yoli, thank you for your call. Yoli from Springfield. I want to ask you, John, because we also got a question on Facebook about a case out of Tennessee where a university professor was fired over Charlie Kirk comments. they're being forced to pay about $500,000 to that professor. Does that case, Jim on Facebook wants to know, have any bearing on Hope's case?
Bearing, yes. Precedent, no. And I'll also add, and this you consider this what it is. I'm 3 times board certified with 8 law licenses. My hourly rate is more than that attorney's. I don't want it. We want to donate some of this money back. Like, this isn't for the money. This is for the precedent. But yeah, sometimes school board members and like where they're headed with doing a 501c4's bidding. And I'm going to add one more point. In Haley Bartlett's case, again, non-sustained. She was back in school for reposting something about Charlie Kirk.
This was your other client that's suing
Correct.
the school district.
They told her during her closing that they didn't know the name of the person who made the complaint, and it was just some anonymous email. So that means anybody with the ability to set up an email account on Gmail could make a complaint, the Friday before little Johnny has a test, and technically every time that suspension should be indefinite. And it's a terrible precedent. And I told him during the meeting, I was like, you can't do this. Like, it's one thing if you have a parent or a teacher or a student complain. Which was all about Thomas Caggiano's case. Like, there were kids that were really upset because of the way he treated them in class.
Kids that changed their classroom in order to not be in his class because they found his attitude towards LGBTQ students so offensive.
And he would blatantly kind of mock pronouns and do things in class that parents were gravely concerned. And this is completely different with both of these. Again, we haven't seen a precedent on the other side where any teacher, any employee, any state employee has not won so far.
Hope, I want to ask you, because you're talking about what we're teaching kids, and I know that, art history has, like other disciplines, but it has a lot of complicated elements. Art history is looking back at not just a lot of pretty pictures, but about social movements and changing times that were radically affected by art, that influenced art. And you're teaching about all of this. And I would guess it makes it harder to teach about that topic when you're facing kind of what you're facing, which is pushback on the nature of your speech in a political realm.
I mean, it can, except, I want to be clear, nobody has come at me for what I'm teaching in my classroom. The fact is, the people who made the complaint have no idea what happens in my classroom. This didn't come from students. It didn't come from parents. It didn't come from my admin or my peers. But it is interesting to be teaching something like advanced placement art history at this moment, because my curriculum, which is a national curriculum that is also approved by the state, covers 25,000 years of art history, right? So it's a curriculum where works of art deal with everything from, religion to power to times of war, times of peace, social issues. So it's an incredibly rich kind of content to have during what is a tumultuous time, I think, in our country right now. And my students respond to it so beautifully. They're so curious, not just about the history of these art objects, but of why they're relevant to them today. And it's not my job to tell them why they're relevant today. That is their own work and their work of discovery. Now, yes, we do look at examples in the curriculum where we can point specifically to works of art that meant one thing at one time and that changed over time depending on the political, often the social political context of it, right?
Yeah. And you mentioned one piece in particular that has gone through kind of a revolutionary change, and that's the Myelin Vietnam Memorial.
That's right. The Vietnam War Memorial, probably many people listening to this have seen it or know of it. It's one of the memorials on the Mall at Washington, D.C., and it was incredibly controversial at the time that it was built and at the time that the design was chosen. So this would be around 1980, 1982, right? So less than a decade after the end of the Vietnam War. It was controversial because the design is black slabs of granite that have etched into its surface about 58,000 names of soldiers who were killed during the Vietnam conflict or are still considered missing. It's controversial because when we think about memorials and monuments, we think of men on horseback, right? We think of things like that Andrew Jackson travesty that sits in the middle of Jacksonville. But this memorial lacked images of people. It was about recognizing names, and it's this black stone that sort of cuts into the landscape in a way that looks like an open wound. And people at first hated it. They also disliked that an Asian young woman was also brought on to do that project. And of course, now it is beloved, it is revered, and considered a sacred space.
It is an interesting frame for a conversation that will continue. We really appreciate the update today. Hope McMath, John Phillips, thank you so much for coming on today and helping us understand the latest on this.
Thank you.
All right. We'll be back in just a minute with a moment of silence and some reflection on our Jags loss.
Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Highway, hospital, home, work. Where injuries happen can make a difference in the law and the outcome.
More at TerrellHoganLaw.com. Scenic Jacksonville presents the Great Cities Symposium on February 5th. Victor Dover, city builder and town planner, shares how he has transformed cities, streets, and neighborhoods through urban design across the U.S. Tickets available at scenicjacksonville.org.
National Theater Live presents A Streetcar Named Desire. Gillian Anderson, Vanessa Kirby, and Ben Foster lead the cast in Tennessee Williams' timeless masterpiece. From visionary director Benedict Andrews, this acclaimed production was filmed during a sold-out run at the Young Vic Theater in 2014. Wednesday, January 14th at WJCT Studios. Popcorn and cash bar available. Doors open at 6:30. Film starts at 7. Go to wjct.org/film for tickets.
Legal scholars say President Trump broke international law when he attacked Venezuela.
The cornerstone of the UN Charter is Article 2.4, prohibiting exactly the kind of use of force that we saw. The claim that this was self-defense is just implausible on its face.
But does it even matter when breaking those same laws have little to no consequence? That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11, here on WJCT News 89.9.
President Trump's military actions in Venezuela are raising serious questions about U.S. intervention abroad, especially while issues abound at home. A new Guardian poll suggests nearly half of Americans believe their financial security is getting worse. What happens when foreign policy pulls focus from domestic problems? That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, talking about this segment yesterday, our associate producer, Isabella Casafau, suggested we just have 7 minutes of silence. We're not going to do that. But Alessandra Pomprian, sportscaster at our news partner, News4Jax, is going to hold our hand and walk us through a little moment of reflection.
I know, how sad.
It is a sad ending. A lot of people are pretty bummed out today for sure. So
no, absolutely. I know I'm laughing, not because I'm happy, but it's just like, it was so shocking. It was so shocking that like you kind of have to laugh. But I laugh a lot. So, it's not
shocking that they lost.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, listen, they had 1 minute to go and you have Cam Little as your kicker. And basically, I mean, anywhere on the field, he's going to kick a field goal. Oh, well, he did miss yesterday, but you think that with 1 minute, you're able to drive down to field goal range and you should be able to tie it, go into overtime, and then have a chance to win. And then there you go. Trevor Lawrence throws an interception. And you're thinking, I remember in the press box, everyone kind of just went silent. And everyone was like, did that really just happen? And I was sitting right next to my boss, Justin Barney, and next to Rachel Phillips, who's the new First Coast News sports reporter and weekend anchor. And I kind of looked at both of them and I was like, did that really just happen? And then I was like, the game can't end. Like, that's not the way the game just ended, right? Like, no way. And like, that's how the Jaguars season is going to end is, kind of obviously very disappointing. And everyone was kind of shocked in the locker room because this was a team that for 8 weeks, no one was stopping them. I mean, they went to the Denver Broncos and they beat them. So you're thinking, oh, this shouldn't be too difficult. But it shows you that playoff experience matters. And the Bills have a ton of playoff experience, and they have Josh Allen as their quarterback. And, he's phenomenal, one of the best in the league. And, the Jaguars defense did as much as they could do. And they really did limit James Cook as much as they possibly could. That was the number one rushing offense against the number one rushing defense. But at the end of the day, it's Josh Allen doing Josh Allen things, and it's the Bills and their playoff experience. And, Sean McDermott has been in this league for a long time. He's an older coach, and, he showed up and he had a phenomenal game plan, and Liam Cohen did as much as he could. Anthony Campanelli did as much as he could, but unfortunately it just didn't come out the way the Jaguars wanted.
The Jaguars fans remained enthusiastic.
Yeah.
They were still, chanting Duval till we die
Yeah.
as they're leaving the stadium, as your station reported. And, there's still a sense that this, while a loss and a disappointment, wasn't like a humiliation. I think that after enduring a lot of actually humiliating seasons, Jaguars fans feel okay, even though they're sad about the loss.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, they should hang their heads high because one, it was a game that was down to literally the final minute. It was 27-24 the final score. So they could have had the chance to tie it, go into overtime, possibly even won it if that, if the interception wasn't thrown. But, it's a season that no one expected. Obviously, no one was going to think that the Jaguars were going to win the AFC South. They were going to go and end the season on an 8-game winning streak, that they were, probably going to have a Coach of the Year finalist, and who's a rookie head coach, by the way, and also has a rookie executive vice president, Tony Baselli, a rookie GM in James Gladstone, a rookie offensive coordinator in Grant Udinski, and a rookie defense coordinator in Anthony Campanelli. I mean, they've never been in their positions before until this season.
And people were actually saying they could be Super Bowl bound. I mean,
absolutely.
Kind of crazy speculation that you would not have expected.
No, 100%. I thought that they were going to go to the Super Bowl. No joke. I was like, I get to go to California. How fun is this? But and a lot of people and networks even thought, they could be definitely Super Bowl contenders. And, last year when the Jaguars went to the Bills, it was, oh my God, that was such an awful game. And they lost by 40 points. It was so embarrassing. And this year, they come here, it's the playoffs, they only lose by 3 points. I mean, that's pretty remarkable, right? It's unfortunate what happened, but still they should hang their heads high because this was one of the best seasons in franchise history. Unfortunately, it didn't end the way everyone wanted to, but they still made it to the playoffs. They finished the season 13-4. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. So what do you think they need to be looking at in the offseason, preparing for next year? How do they keep their momentum and sort of their spirit as high as it's been?
And that's going to be really the toughest test is how do you, after this kind of devastating loss. I asked Travis Etienne in the locker room afterwards, I'm like, how you feeling? He was like, I'm not feeling good. He was like, it's kind of shocking. They really did believe that they had the confidence before the game that they thought they were going to win. They thought they had everything in place. They had the perfect game plan. They thought they had the momentum and the confidence to go out there and win. It didn't go their way. But that's the big thing. I mean, you're going to look at guys who are going to be free agents. Is Travis Etienne coming back? He had such a good season this year, but, he's an older running back in the league. Will they keep him or will, he go somewhere else? When you have Bashal Tootin and LaQuinn Allen, who are very good running backs, and they were, this was their rookie season. So what's going to happen with him? Devin Lloyd, was an all-pro player this year. He had a really good year, especially in the month of September when he was the AFC Player of the Month. So, is he staying? There's a lot to discuss. And then, who are you going to get rid of? Who are you going to bring in too? Free agency is in March, around the Players Championship week.
A little busy for you.
Yeah, oh my gosh, it's awful. And then but everyone kind of forgot Travis Hunter's still on the team and he's still rehabbing. So what is he going to look like next season when he comes back? Will he be playing both ways? Because he obviously wasn't able to do that this year because he was injured.
Well, Alessandra, it might be a minute before we see you again since it's the end of the season, but thanks so much for being here and sticking with us and covering the Jags for us.
No, thank you guys so much. You guys are some of my favorite people in Jacksonville, and so I always look forward to Monday morning coming here. So
even if you've been sleepless over the weekend. Thanks again, Alessandra. And thank you for listening. That's our program. If you have comments or suggestions, you can send either to First Coast Connect at wjct.org. Join us tomorrow when we ask the mayor. We talk to Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan for our monthly Ask the Mayor segment. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. AEG presents The Beach Boys, saluting 60 years of pet sounds with 2 shows at the Ponte Vedra Concert Hall, Monday, January 26th at 5 and 8:30 p.m. Tickets and information available at axs.com.
This is WJCT News